Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Linda Schenk, and I'm the Executive Officer for Wine Communicators of Australia. Boy, what a crazy world we're in right now. Less than 10 days ago, our South Australian WCA chapter held a Zoom meeting, which is unusual for us, to discuss what we're doing and what we can do to support our wine community. The discussion soon worked around towards hosting a virtual tasting event rather than an actual event that we normally do. It was at that time that Professor Roberta Crouch of Flinders University advised that she'd conducted some research which had been funded by Wine Australia on that very subject. So of course that actual moment sprouted today's webinar. Today is a special webinar. It's outside of our normal program, and we thank both Wine Australia and Roberta Crouch for their time and for their generosity to bring this presentation to you today. Roberta will be sharing with us tips and findings that she found through her research on virtual tastings. There will be plenty of time today for many questions. So if you have questions, please ensure that you write them down as you think of them at the bottom of your screen. If you hover over the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A section there. Please click on that and write your questions in as you think of them so that you don't forget. As per usual, this webinar will be recorded and a link will be sent to you for the recording. So please remember that link will be sent to you after the webinar. Sorry, I just had this phone notification on my screen, so it distracted me for a minute there. Look, that's enough from me right now. You don't want to hear from me. I'm sure you all want to hear from Roberta, so I will now hand it over to you. Thanks, Roberta.
Thanks, Linda. Hello, everybody. I just want to share with you some of the findings from a 3-year study that I conducted with Wine Australia. It was actually a few years ago now, but the findings are still relevant and the technology is still relevant. And in fact, on that front, things haven't changed all that much. So without further ado, we'll move into our findings with respect to running live streaming events that involve virtual tastings, but also a lot of other things. So what we're going to talk about today is really the basis of the research about co-creating events with your customers, both face-to-face and online, assessing your own web presence prior to starting to do that, what running these kinds of events can achieve. And then I want to share with you some examples of this project funded by Wine Australia. And this involved creating 2 regional online communities, the Adelaide Hills Wine Room and the Barossa HQ. Also 1 individual wine brand community, which was Mount Sermon Wine Lounge in Clare Valley. And all in all, over this time, I ran 65 live streamed events, which involved about 240 hours of captured video. We surveyed 250 participants and scrolled through and analyzed 1,700 statements in the chat. And then I'm going to give you some tips and hopefully some help in terms of thinking about putting together some live streaming events for yourself, what it takes and the benefits of actively engaging with your customers, and then help you with some questions if you have any at the end. Okay, so what really are we looking for when we run any kind of an event that involves our customers? Well, we're really looking, of course, to sell our products. We're looking to sell wine, and we're looking to build loyalty. And we've kind of moved forward from the traditional idea of loyalty to what we call attachment, real emotional attachment. And this involves people feeling involved with your brand, being really interested in it, and it has quite personal significance for them. And when people get involved with a brand or a category of products, they spend a lot of time thinking about it, chatting to each other about it, and engaging in information. And this involves really high degrees of interaction. And that's why a live streaming event in particular, where you have people who are interested in your brand or your product, and then somebody who's a brand ambassador, somebody really knowledgeable about it, come together, share ideas, exchange information, and it is a really meaningful experience for people. So what do you get out of that? Well, these people who come to interact with you and to become attached to your brand, they are loyal, which means they have a very loyal attitude towards you. They give you positive word of mouth, but also they buy your products. You're front of mind from them, and they will give your products preference over others. And something else that's really important, particularly in the online world that we live in now, and the social media world we live in, these people become not just people who advocate your brand, but also defend it and will come out and speak for it when other people speak against you. The best thing for you, this is sort of the marketing holy grail, is these people become less price sensitive. So they're willing to pay a premium price for your product. They share word of mouth, but they also want to be able to share their views with you. Because you've already got them on board, the cost of selling to them is lower. But one of the great things that you also get out of these events, whether they're face-to-face or online, is a source of ideas and other forms of valuable feedback. So it really is worthwhile for you to engage with your consumers as often and as meaningful, in the most meaningful ways possible. So we know from research, there's screeds of research on this. I've done some myself, but this has been done around the world. We know that a cellar door visit or a personal interaction, a wine dinner, something like that, can either spark attachment where none existed before or reinforce attachment. And so when we first started doing this project, the question was, well, is it possible to recreate that or even improve it online? And to be honest, when I was first putting this project together, I was really thinking about wine tourists who come to Australia and they visit Cellar Doors and they really love it and they love the wine, but then they might go back to another country overseas, or they might even go to another part of Australia and maybe never get the chance to come back. How can they come back and interact personally? And the obvious thing is to say, well, can we set something up online to allow that to happen? And the answer is yes, you can. And in fact, it can be even more meaningful than a face-to-face experience. But, you can do it without any special talent. And again, another really great thing about the online experience is that you can do it without a lot of money. And that's important. But like anything else that's worth doing, it does take a bit of thinking and planning to get the best out of it. And then at the end of it, what you'll actually build with your people, they'll become your people, is a following. And this is a brand community, which is quite an organic thing. But like all good gardens, it takes a little bit of fertilizer and a little bit of attention and nurturing, again, for you as a brand to get the best out of it. So how does it work? Well, I don't want to bore you with a lot of statistics and complicated modeling and all the rest of it, but this is just a simple flow chart illustrating how it works in the minds of people. On this side, on the left, over on the left-hand side, we have what we'll call, I'll refer to this person for the rest of the presentation as the brand ambassador. So it's the winemaker. Or if you were a cheesemaker, we had some food events, we had events, we had artists that were interviewed, we had lots of different types of events, but mostly for your virtual tastings, it's going to be the winemaker. And this person is very often a winemaker that people would never get to meet just by popping into the cellar door. So it's already a special event for them. And then what happens in terms of the consumer experience from this exchange, from this live two-way conversation that takes place? Well, they learn about wine and they're interested in wine. That's why they've come into the event. Very important, they get to socialize with others because wine is a social thing, but this is also an online gathering of the tribe. And so they get to socialize with others. As you run more events, people will recognize each other in the event. And you will also notice in the chat that there's socializing outside of what the ambassador is doing, but the ambassador fosters this environment. And then the last thing, but also a very important thing, is this fun factor. People have a good time. And why wouldn't they? They're learning about wine from a knowledgeable person. They're getting a chance to chat with others, people they know, people they'll meet in the room, and they will have fun. So then those three things, these three very important experiential things, lead to their perception, their overall judgment of, well, was that fun? Was that good? Did I enjoy that? And what we found was the overwhelming answer is yes, indeed. And in particular, people felt that they were part of a special group. And I do a lot of my work with premium wine buyers. And I can tell you that one of the things a premium wine buyer loves is a little bit of cachet when they're chatting to their other sort of wine geek friends about the fact that they enjoyed this special interaction with someone that would not be easy for most people to meet. You know, oh, well, the other day when I was chatting with so-and-so, he told me or she told me that they always make their wine this way because of whatever it might be. Or the wine from XYZ brand, well, that's very special because of the soil. I was told about that by the winemaker in this event in my wine club. So this is really important, again, to particularly to premium wine buyers. So not surprisingly, the follow on from that is a difference in their belief about that brand and enhanced attachment. And the attachment factor, you know, from just one event can grow an amazing amount. I mean, we were overwhelmed by it, to be honest. And then what follows on from that are two very important things. First of all, people will give you positive word of mouth, and that's really important. There they are advocating for you. And in the Barossa Valley community in particular, we saw a big jump in the willingness to pay for a bottle of wine. So this outcome for your brand is all positive. Now, again, bearing in mind that I was just doing research, I wasn't actually promoting these communities. They just grew organically. And at the end, when we shut the program down, the Barossa HQ had grown to 350 members. Adelaide Hills had 400 members of their community, and we did less time with Mount Sermon, but they still managed to grow their community to 90 members of their wine lounge. And like I said, on average, the willingness to pay for a bottle of wine from the Barossa Valley jumped $2.70 for a bottle as the result of one event. So if people say, oh, look, you know, there's nothing really you can get out of this, I have to say that that's just not the case. There's a lot you can get out of it. Plus, you know, we got a lot of feedback from the host who said, wow, you know, I didn't realize people felt that way. That was great feedback for us. We learned a lot from that experience. So this co-created event is not just all a great outcome for the consumer, although that is there. It's also a great outcome for the brand. So what makes a brand ambassador successful? Well, we launched the Adelaide Hills community first, and we didn't do any quantitative research there. We really used them, and they were fantastic to learn how to do this thing. And you know what, we made lots of mistakes and we had a lot of fun, but everything always worked out okay. But we learned a lot about what people are really looking for, but most importantly, what they're not looking for. And we really misread initially what they were looking for. What they're not looking for, I can tell you, is they're not looking for a wine lecture or people engaging in storytelling with each other. What they're looking for is, and they crave it in fact, is just honesty, authenticity, bit of humor. We're Australians and we're known for our down-to-earth attitude, but most importantly, you've invited them into this event, they've taken the time to dial in and join you, and they want some attention. Modern consumers are very focused on sharing their views with brands and having brands acknowledge those views. So one of the things you absolutely must do is face the camera straight on. Now, sometimes that's a little bit daunting. You know, you're trying to engage in a webcam, a bit like I'm trying to engage in a webcam right now, but look straight at it and make sure that you put that webcam quite close to you. We just had a webcam like you buy from anywhere you like, and we bulldog clipped it to the top of a camera tripod, and we ran the whole streaming off of a PC. Remember that it's not about the background. So focus on your presenters and their props. You know, we had show and tell. People would bring in like core samples of soil. They would bring in examples of food for food matching. They would bring pictures in. They would bring different kinds of glasses in if they felt the glass and how what you drink the wine out of would make a difference. Carafes, all sorts of things. So, and of course, because you're trying to promote your brand, you keep your bottles front and center with the labels appropriately displayed. One thing, again, that's really important is that you answer questions and respond to comments promptly. And people love that. You know, they ask you a question, they don't expect you to ignore that question. In fact, you'll get quite negative feedback pretty quickly about that. And they do expect you to also even respond to some of their comments. And I'll show you an example of Bert's sermon doing that a bit later. And here's the big one. Do not engage in deep conversations with co-presenters, or heaven forbid, although we had one person do it, turn your shoulder to the camera. You are there to interact with your customers. You know, when you have, I don't want to call it, well, we called it the winemaker bromance, when in particular when we had two male presenters, but it could be a she-mance, I suppose, where winemakers, when they get together, quite naturally, they share so many interests, they would a couple of times get really involved in the conversation with themselves. And while that might be quite interesting to listen to for a moment or two, our participants got bored with that pretty quickly and made those feelings known. Okay, so what do people love? And we had a scale for this and we measured this empirically. And the people who were the most influential in terms of pushing through to that word of mouth and willingness to pay at the end, who made things the most fun, the most social, allowed people to pick up lots of learning, were those that were engaging, not boring. But don't worry, people don't expect a game show host or a stand-up comedian. Just be interested, be genuinely interested, be sincere. If you don't know the answer to something, just say so. Just say, oh God, good question. Got no idea on that. Maybe someone else in the audience would know that. Maybe, or here's somewhere where you might find the answer. Again, it's important to be interested in the comments and opinions and not afraid of criticism. You know, these are unscripted events. So I would, you know, talk to the winemakers and say, well, you're going to ask people how they like your wine. And some of them may not, and I'll make sure that people are not horrible, but you know, you have a moderator, but you might get some criticism and you just have to be prepared to answer that. And again, people were really good. I'll give you an example of that a bit later on. Interesting to listen to, you know, think about what you're going to talk about, think about the props, think about how you're going to present your wine, and you know, just keep things moving. Of course, you're going to be knowledgeable about your area, likable, but really all people are looking for there is authenticity and a willingness to engage, honesty, be prepared, and then this then leads people to feel that they can relate to you, and again, down to earth. And this is a characteristic of our culture. And so people expect that. They don't want wine snobs because most people are not wine snobs themselves. Okay, some things to think about before you start. Review, you know, start at the beginning. First of all, have a little look at your own brand website. You know, your brand website is what I call the home base. Social media, I consider the daily news really important, but all social media should point back to your website. That's where people will join your club. That's where they'll buy your wine, and then they can spend some time learning about your brand story if they wish to. Websites these days, they do not have to be complex, and in fact, they shouldn't be. I've done some research in this area too. I've done 2 studies assessing the quality and overall engagement related to brand websites. The best ones are simple, easy to navigate. Make sure you don't have dead links or out of date information. Just make sure things are clear and people can get around and find the things they want very easily. Create a place for your live streaming to take place, and then to upload the links to the recorded video later. Have your wine club for people to join for the streaming. It's free, of course, and then your tasting packs are easy to find and to buy. Now, it's not just on that. Of course, you want to offer a tasting pack, but sometimes people will, perhaps for the first 1 or 2 events, not have your wine, and that's perfectly fine. They can drink. You can always ask them, for those of you that aren't drinking our wine tonight, tell us what you're drinking. Tell us what you're enjoying. And then people will come in and let you know that, and you can have a bit of a conversation. But of course, the idea is for them to say, well, next time I want to have the wine that the winemaker is going to talk about, and then I can give feedback on that wine. So then plan your calendar of events and decide on a date and time, and then stick to it, because then habit can form. For interactive events in the old days, Tuesdays and Wednesdays were good. They were sort of the quiet evenings of the week. At the Adelaide Hills, we had Wine Wednesday. Bert and Jenny Sermon used to go on a Tuesday. Now you can probably choose dates and times that are more aligned with the weekends or whatever, because so many people are at home, but hopefully that will end reasonably soon. So think about a time where people are not going to be busy doing other things. For non-interactive events like Instagram Live and those sorts of things, then just any time that there's something going on that you'd like to share. A really important aspect is to keep your events to 1 hour or less. We found that worked the best. It's not a big time commitment to people. It allows things to keep moving, and also it allows you to end the event with people wanting more. So it ends on a high, you know. After that 55 minutes or so, or a little earlier, if the questions have petered out, you say, well, thanks for joining us tonight. That was fantastic. We'll see you at our next event, which is at this date, at this time. And we always ended up the night with glasses up and cheers. See you next time. Now, your events can be anything. We had an event one time about sustainability in the vineyard, and it was called Who's Living in the Vineyard? We had an event with Utter Delights, which was about cheese, and then the wines that went with the cheeses from various different brands. It can be anything you like. But you need to think about, again, what is it you want people to learn about you? What's important to you? So, of course, when we had biodynamic winemakers on board, they really talked a lot about their belief in that method. They had lots of props about that method, and that was very interesting. But you will certainly have a story, and you can think about what your distinctive values and brand attributes are, and why people should think your wine is special and want to participate with you, and of course not anybody else. So as an example, for Bert and Jenny Sermon, they had an art gallery, they had a kitchen, and they had an amazing panoramic view of the Clare Valley and a retreat. So all of their events revolved around a recipe. Jenny would put the recipe up on their website, the wine that would match it. They had a tasting pack that went with, and if you ordered that, then you got an apron so you could cook along with Jenny, and the apron, of course, had the branding on it. So You then get your pack together, maybe a 3-pack or a 6-pack. If you want to provide a little incentive to buy in, why not? These are your people. They should get a little bit of a deal, perhaps, especially in the beginning, but it doesn't have to be much. As I mentioned, there was the Bert and Jenny Mount Sermon apron. You know, is there any other merchandise that you could link? Glasses or, you know, who knows? And then, of course, make sure you talk about it. Social media, websites, word of mouth. Now, I need to give you a little spoiler alert here. When I started working with brands, they thought, oh yes, you know, our mailing list, our club people, they're really engaged. They're gonna kill themselves to come on board. And that actually was not the case. A lot of brands found that they really had mailing lists of people who weren't particularly involved with the brand. They were probably on dozens of mailing lists. And so don't be disheartened if you find you really have to work a little bit to get people to come in. But once they start to come in and they have a good experience, then it will be organic and it'll get easier and easier. So here's one of the most important things. So I've kind of left it for last here. Think about who will be supporting your ambassador. We found 2 people in front of the camera was the best. It is a critical job. In these days, you have to be assured about social distancing as well, but 2 people. And this sidekick or this host is the person who monitors the feed, you know, on a tablet or a web or another laptop, and cues the ambassador, passes on comments, passes on questions, and then of course can ask a question themselves or cue something, you know, before the streaming goes. You know, you might, with your helper, say, well, don't forget we want to talk about our concert or we want to talk about our pizza oven, and then the ambassador gets involved in the questions and may forget to do that. So the offsider can provide cues and keep things moving. Tash Studley and Sue Bell did a great job at the Adelaide Hills, and James March did a great job for Barossa HQ quite often, and then of course Bert and Jenny were their own ambassadors. Now in terms of the technology, the good news is this is really quite simple. You need a decent webcam. We stuck it, like I said, with a bulldog clip on top of a tripod, a camera tripod, and then we had a sort of a standalone microphone. There's just an example there that would be right in front of the presenters, a PC to monitor the event, and then a laptop or a tablet for the co-host. Phones are just too little. And then in terms of the platforms, there's lots of options. I used Netro Media, which is still working. I downloaded Flash Media Live Encoder 3.2, which is free, still available. Facebook Live does some streaming. I don't know how well that goes in terms of recording the sessions or making the window live enough. But if you might trial a few things there, but I have to recommend to you that you bring people into your website. You know, even social media, people can get distracted. If you have them in your website, then that's where they can buy wine straight away, do all sorts of things straight away, and you're bringing them into you. But I'm sure all of you have a tech expert that you can have a practice with or get recommendations from. And at this point, I'm going to give a bit of a shout out to 000, who were with us on this whole journey and created our little web window viewers and gave us tech advice, and were just fantastic. And they're in town off Hutt Street. I'm not aligned with them in any way, but if there's anybody that knows this space, it's Isaac and his colleagues there. So I'm sure they'd be happy to give you some advice. Now, one of the things that was a real issue for us when we were running these events years ago was reliable Wi-Fi, particularly out in the Barossa And so we ended up running quite a few events at the university. And so hopefully that wouldn't be a problem for you now. Bert and Jenny had some problems because they always ran out of the Clare Valley, and I think they had some kind of cheesy satellite modem or something, and it just became an artifact of their streaming. But we worked through it. But you do need good, fast, reliable Wi-Fi because streaming is greedy. And then, very important, decide where you will store your videos with a link to your website, links through Twitter, links through Facebook, Instagram, etc. I kept mine in Vimeo. They're still there if any of you want to watch. There's 65 of them up there. YouTube is another option. Remember to have fun. This should be fun for you. These are totally unscripted, co-created events, and that's how they're meant to be. Okay, so let's have a look. Here was our first effort, and look, we learned a lot here. This was the Adelaide Hills wine region, and here we're setting up for an event. Here was a little chef that came in, and in this, I didn't know in the event, he had dry ice in that canister, which was which was a bit funny. But anyway, he was freeze drying some fruit that was going with, I think, some sparkling that was going to be tested. And as you can see, we're crammed into an office at the university. Sue Bell's there, Tash is there, and we're just getting ready to go live. We're in a very small space. And then here's an example of us streaming another event, a very early event in another office. Now, this was fantastic. Oops, sorry. These guys are exhibiting this issue of ignoring what's going on down here and engaging with each other. Now, I'm not having a go at them because we were all learning. This, like I said, was maybe the second event that we'd ever run. And we didn't realize how important it was to make sure that people looked straight into the camera and paid absolute and total attention to what the participants were commenting, asking, etc. These guys are just really involved and are obviously having a very lively conversation. But the problem is the people who are tuned in are being left out of this conversation. But one of the things that was great about this event was that they brought these wine glasses and they put all the essence of the wines. There was spice and cinnamon and floral and pepper and all of these things. So that's just an example of some props. Okay, we've learned a bit more now, and I wanted to just show you sort of how the Adelaide Hills wine room looked. You could see that there's the video along the top. There's the forum, the wine room. Now here we've got Jane Bromley and Hilton McLean running a really great little session. People love this, where Jane actually did a demonstration on how to make sparkling wine. So she worked through that, and she also ran a little quiz. People who got the quiz right got some free wine. And as you can see, she's got her laptop in front of her, and she's totally engaged with people answering questions. And then there's some side conversations going on in the chat down the side. And one of the great things that happens in the chat room, and that's why I think chat is still really, at the end of the day, the best way to go, even now, is it allows a lot of people to come in, but a lot of sideways conversations start to happen. And this goes to this enjoyment and social interaction. We had a really wonderful lady winemaker from the Barossa do a streaming one time, and one of the women who was in the chat just asked her, you know, what do you like so much about living in the Barossa? Because not all questions are about the wine. And she said, oh, I really love it here. And I've got 2 boys, and I think it's a great place for them to grow up, which was nice for her to share. And then there was this really great side conversation that started to happen between other mothers who were in the chat. So this all happens, and that's fantastic when it does. Now here's Bert and Jenny. We actually rebranded them as part of this exercise. You can see their wine lounge button there. And so they're all about the fantastic view from their cellar door, their retreat, They also had a big program of sustainability. So it's about, you know, animals and who lives in the vineyard and all that sort of stuff. Then, as you can see here, there's Bert and Jenny. She's about to cook that recipe, which is rabbit stew with black olives, and it's going to go with their cab sauv. So she posts the recipe in advance so that if people want to cook along with her, they can. And then the stream's going there. And this is just a close-up view of that. And then later on, that video goes into their website list. And as you can see, for that particular forum, there was 141 comments in that chat. But Bert and Jenny were also good at doing other stuff. They had an art gallery, and they went to the art gallery. So here's Bert and Jenny go to the SA Art Gallery. There's their breakfast club. There's their chat with the photographer. So they used to put lots of little vids up as well, and people could just watch them. They did a recipe one time, yabby pasta. So there was a little vid of Bert, you know, catching yabbies in the dam and then cleaning them up, and then that night they did the recipe. So it all linked together, and it was all very much in keeping with their brand values. So now, I hope this works. We're going to go to a little bit of video there with Bert and Jenny. So I hope I can find it. Here we go. Now, I'll just play a couple of minutes from the beginning, and then we'll jump to the end. Now, you'll notice that the voice and the picture don't quite line up, but that's an artifact of the terrible broadband that they dealt with at that time. So here they go.
Good evening, Bertie. Would you like to come and join me?
Time to don the apron, is it? To don the Mount Sermon apron?
I think, yes, it is.
Right, are we on?
Yes, we're on. Good evening, I'm Jenny Sermon from Mount Sermon Wines.
And I'm Bert Sermon from Mount Sermon Wines, except Jenny's supposed to be in the kitchen. I'm supposed to be from Mount Sermon Wines.
I'm from Scarlatti's kitchen.
That's right. Tonight we're dealing with a rabbit dish. What do you call it?
Well,
a hunter's dish, I think.
Well, it's a hunter's dish from rural Spain and Italy.
And that's why we're into rabbit and black olives.
Black olives, yes.
And that's why we're matching the rabbit and black olives with this wine, because on our palates, there's overtures of cinnamon and cloves and dark chocolate in this wine, and these spices appear in the recipe. So tonight we're dealing with the 2006 Mount Sermon Cabernet Sauvignon to match with Jenny's. You don't call it a fricassee, do you? A fricassee
no, fricassee's in a white sauce. I
yeah.
think at once I'll put it up as a fricassee, but it's actually a hunter's stew because it's very wholesome.
Is it?
Oh, very wholesome.
Why is it wholesome?
Well, it must be the chocolate that goes in it. It just gives it a richness and plus the combination of spices that we'll go through shortly.
Okay. Now, with this wine, this is a 2006, as I said, so I have decanted it. I've decanted it into the peasant's jug. And why do we do this? Well, it's said that the experts claim that you should, with an old wine, and this is a 6-year-old wine, that should be decanted 1 hour for each year in the bottle. And it's like if you were locked up in that bottle for 6 years, you'd be all squeezed up, and what you've got to do is to get yourself out and get your arms out and your leg, and you've got to stretch. So
Okay, we'll go ahead a little bit.
Long chunk. So we have the parsnip into, what are they called?
lardons.
Lardons.
The French call it lardons.
Lardon.
A lardon is something like that. It's
just a little chunk.
a long
chunk. So we have a parsnip, and we have garlic, and we have bacon and rabbit, mushrooms, an assortment of herbs and spices, chocolate and olives.
Would you believe?
While Bertie continues on, I'll peel the garlic, chop the onion. That'll give me something to do.
Okay, what I'll do is answer some of these questions. Julie says she's keen to know if the chocolate will go with the olives. Well, we have tried this before, and on our palate it does. And of course, chocolate is not unknown in Spanish and Argentine cooking. And in fact, I think it was also used in French cooking once chocolate arrived in France. And we see we've got Bruce Tolley here tonight. Good evening, Bruce. How are you?
Bruce Tolley?
Bruce Tolley. We've got many people commenting on your barrel out on our terrace, Bruce, with all your dancing ladies on it. Aaron says that it's rich, nice and rich. The wine is nice and rich. It has got a good rich taste. That will become even better once the wine starts to come up to room temperature. I think I've got my wrong glasses on here. I'll just change these over, then I don't have to.
Okay, I'll just take you straight to the end now, because we always ended these guys in
Today.
and
Sells it. And guest 839, etc. Congrats. A terrific presentation, both of you.
Oh,
so
thank you.
I think we're coming to an end, aren't we?
Yes. And
So here's a cheer to you all. Hope you've enjoyed what we've done from Scarletti's Kitchen at Mount Sermon Wines. And I'm going to give my darling a kiss. Because whilst Clare Valley is on about magic, Mount Sermon Wine is on about romance. And here's to you.
thank you for joining us.
okay. The last one, just before we take questions, was, the pièce de résistance, really, which was Barossa HQ. So here,
Joel and Peter.
whoops.
Good evening and welcome to Barossa HQ. I'm James March and I work for the Barossa Growth and Wine Association, and tonight I'm doing my best to impersonate Toby Barlow, Senior Winemaker of St Hallett, who was advertised to be here, but unfortunately being a Victorian and never really reliable Stuart, we've had to come up on our own, but I'm delighted to welcome
this
Stuart.
one. Sorry. There we go. So here we had everything sort of fall into line. We've got a Twitter feed happening here. We've got tasting notes for the wine here. This was St. Hallett wine, being Stuart Blackwell with James March. Here we've got a couple of guys from Shield Estates. This shows you what this looked like before that. And then we started getting, at the end of the project, people sending us some little pictures about what they were experiencing at home, which was really great. So just to end the presentation, I just wanted to share this feedback. And again, another photo from some people who came in at every event at home. I think these four lived together, had a shared house or whatever. But I thought when we started getting feedback like this, our work is done and we'd pretty much come to the end of the project anyway. But this event actually motivated this lady to get a friend and drive up to the Barossa Valley and go to St. Hallett. She wasn't familiar with their wines before, and experience their cellar door and have a great time. And again, spreading the good word amongst friends and anyone's interested in wine. So I think if you can start getting that kind of feedback from these events, then that really shows how powerful that they can be. So the last thing I want to say before I stop is please feel free to contact me if you would like any help. I'm more than happy to help anyone set up some events or talk to you about your own brand, etc. So with that, I'll pretty much finish off and take questions if you have any.
Thanks, Roberta. There's been questions coming throughout the presentation. So some of them are a little bit further back on some of the previous slides, but I'm sure that we'll be able to work it out. So the first question is, on one of the slides you had mentioned that people don't want to hear about wine lecturing, which we absolutely agree with. But it also said they don't want to hear stories. So did we hear that correctly or misunderstand?
Sorry, storytelling. So storytelling is okay as long as it's not stories between presenters. So here's this kind of situation where you have people engaged with each other, but not with the people on board. By all means, tell stories, and then people can engage with those stories. But just make sure that your focus is on sharing your knowledge and then responding immediately to people as they give you feedback.
Great, thank you. And the question around Flash, what was it? Flash something live.
Oh, it's Adobe Live Encoder, and you can just download that from the internet. It's free.
Great, thank you. Okay, suggestions around how should the wineries send out their packs? Should it be in small bottles, full-size bottles? What's your recommendation?
Oh, full bottles. You want to sell them a full bottle. Yes, by all means. I mean, if we thought about, sort of tasting bottles and all the rest of it, but really, that's a lot of expense and bother for no reason. You might just want to start with a 3-pack for the first 3 events so that people don't have to make a big commitment. But if they're existing customers, then they might fold their tasting pack in with their regular order, or whatever a brand thinks may work for them.
Okay, great, thank you. Now, with the example using Jane Bromley, there was you mentioned there was a lot of chatter on the side. Tell me, was there a moderator on the side watching this and helping Jane, throughout that process, or was she, double dipping or double handling? Multitasking.
Well, Jane, I think that Hilton was supposed to be her compere, but she decided she would handle it all herself, and he helped with the props, because that was quite something, that sparkling demo that she did, and he helped her with that, and she just chose herself to keep the monitor in front and just handle questions and comments as they came along. They also ran a little quiz, like I said, and then offered rewards for people who got the quiz questions right. So that was good fun. People loved that.
Great. So with the live chat room again, so you mentioned that the audience was very interactive during that time, or using that facility. Would it be viable to have the interactions shared on the video screen?
Well, I suppose it could be. It's interesting. Isaac and I talked about this recently from 000, where we were deja vu, getting the band back together. And we wondered about that. And I guess it depends on how many people are going to come into the room. When you have a lot of people in there, it's probably best to keep it on the side. One of the things I noticed, for example, when I was on the weekend joining a couple of Instagram live streamings, it was problematic because even on a tablet or certainly on a phone, the comments were hard to read. And I noticed that the people who were doing those Instagram lives never responded to any of the comments or questions. And I think it might be just a bit difficult.
Cool. Just a question around actually your presentation. On some of people's screens, it's a little bit pixelated. Are you happy for us to send the presentation around with the link?
Oh, yes, sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. More questions here. They're coming through thick and fast. Can you please reiterate what you said around the running of the session through a business's website, and how do people share or tune into the link?
Yep. Well, again, you just need to have somebody set up that particular facility on your website, and then you send the link out to you send your calendar as part of the email out to people, and the calendar is always on your website too. And then people can just join the room. Now we had people join quite formally, even though it was free and they had their password and username and all that sort of stuff. I don't think you really need to do that these days. But really, it was just a matter of going to the website and joining the conversation, just like joining a Zoom meeting. Same deal.
Great. Thank you. Here's a good question. Okay, so people obviously enjoy these types of events. Give us your recommendations on how you would suggest, or how can you monetize such events?
Make money out of them.
Correct.
Well, I think if you can get somebody in a car to drive out to the Barossa and go to the tasting room, If the people in the tasting room couldn't convert that into a sale, I would despair, I have to say. But really, this whole thing about getting engaged consumers is about the fact that they buy your wine, and they have a brand preference for you. You become important to them. And it might be that they might share their loyalty a little bit across a couple of different brands. That's okay. But it's better they come to these events through you than say through a third-party operator, because a third-party operator has got literally thousands of brands on sale. So the whole idea of getting engaged consumers and interacting with them is because they then develop a preference for your brand over others. That's the first point. But the other very important point is they become less price sensitive. So they come to feel that your brand is worth more, and they're more willing to pay for it. So that's really where the payoff is. Plus word of mouth. They make recommendations. So, you know, you get people to come to your cellar door for that purpose. So this is a virtual cellar door. Except people, like, interesting in that email, we drove out to St. Helens to see Stuart Blackwell. Well, you know, the likelihood of Stuart Blackwell attending the bar at the website is almost zero, but they got to meet him through this particular mechanism. So people get to meet and interact with people that they would never meet and interact with unless it's, you know, very likely at the cellar door themselves. This is valuable to them.
So I'm going to combine two questions now. One is, what is the time frame that you would recommend to get packs out to the audience? Mm-hmm. And the second one being, would you suggest only one wine at a time per event?
Thanks for that. Well, I think you plan your calendar, like I said, maybe 3 months in advance or even a month in advance. I mean, times are quite unique now. But I think as things normalize, and we all hope they do normalize, you know, you might want to have a calendar for 6 months, but let's say 3 months. And then people have advance notice. They can look at the calendar all the time. You can post the calendar through social media. And then we would send out reminder emails. And then again, as we did for this event, put the stuff up on social media, just say, right, oh, don't forget, we've got the event tonight. And a lot of people would participate in these events and think they were great and not actually have the particular wine in front of them, not for their first or second event. They then buy in. We had a Chocovino event. It was the first one ever. And a guy put in the chat room, he said, oh my God, I haven't got the chocolate and I haven't got the wine, but I found a glass of Merlot and an old Easter egg, and this is great. So people will find their own way to participate.
Excellent, thank you. There's a question here, and it's interesting because this is exactly what we're doing today. The question is, can you have two hosts in a different location screening at the same time? And I can let the person writing this one know that Roberta and I are in completely different locations. We're in each other. She's in her house and I'm in mine because of the current situation. So I'll let you answer that one. How would you do that, Roberta?
Yes, look, there's no problem with that. I mean, it's quite nice sort of on screen to see two people, but we have had individual presenters, no problem about that. And then, you know, the helper who fields the questions and the comments can certainly be in a different location. You know, no problem about that. And you can do it just like we're doing it here and share screen, or, you know, there's, again, the technology today allows for all of that.
And what about, is there any step-by-step guides that you could recommend to explain how to set up and run a virtual tasting? There seems to be quite a lot of different options.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, my setup guide was, yes, I mean, yeah, I could do it for Adobe and for having your own window, but you have to choose your own platform, and there are many options. So that's why I didn't actually, in this presentation, provide the setup guide for the way we did this, because you may not do it this way. But it's really as simple as, truly, as getting your camera, having your streaming software on your computer, and then having the URL, and you cut and paste the URL, and you hit the play button, and you make sure that you record to your PC. Then later on, you upload that to Vimeo or YouTube or however you want to do it, and put the link in your website, put your link in Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so forth. It's, you know, I'm not a I'm no techno genius, and I was able to learn how to do it pretty quickly. So that's saying something.
There's been a suggestion or a comment around whether you think that it would be worthwhile putting where someone could buy the wine on the live chat page. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, if you look at HQ, I'll get rid of that. You can see this was one of the things we learned when I was watching people in the chat room, because we ran a lab as well. I found the only time they ever left the live feed was to go to the website to look at tasting notes and to look at the shopping guide. So you'll notice that the tasting notes are here, and the link to the website is there, Facebook, Twitter, and so forth. And there was a host on the profile. So by all means, make those links available. And it was interesting. I was thinking about, you know, nowadays, perhaps people watching these things on the phone. And then Kate Harvey from Wine Australia said, yeah, but what about people watching this on their TV? Because now, of course, especially over the next weeks or so, you're going to have people kind of locked in, and they might say, well, we can't all share a laptop viewer. Let's Bluetooth it to the television, or through HTML, or HDMI cable, we'll put it through to the TV. So, you know, it's very easy then to have many things going on, and certainly the link to how to buy the wine is front and center, or should be.
Great. Okay, next question. Can you drop in a short clip or video, vintage footage, winery footage, to add visual entertainment?
Yes, you can. I mean, again, Bert and Jenny were the classics of that. They used to put up lots of little vids in the run up to their events, and it might be them picking grapes, like I said, you know, Bert catching yabbies for the yabby pasta. Whether or not you want to share screens, like I shared screens today, I needed a tutorial on it, but you can flip back and forth. Again, things are available now. You know, we had to keep it simple when we were doing this, because we were actually more concerned about how to get people to want to buy the wines and develop loyalty to the brand than the actual technology itself, to be honest. But now you can flip to different applications and bring people back and forth and say, yes, now let's go to the video of such and such, or, you know, let's go live to the tasting room or the winery or whatever you like.
There's a comment here, it's not really a question, there's a comment here around the technology that's available with different social platforms at the moment. There's a comment saying that while it's ideal to put, you know, this type of content on your website, it's also an opportunity to trial things like Facebook Live and Instagram, all the different things that are available now online. So I think that people can have fun with this, right?
Oh, for sure. And that's what I was saying. I think if you had something going on at your vineyard or at your cellar door, Instagram Live would be perfect for that, because you're not necessarily going to have learning and, you know, or the socializing. Because what I noticed about the Instagram Live events that I went into, there wasn't any socializing between people who were posting. They were just posting, checking in almost. So Instagram Live would be perfect for just bringing people out from the outside into what you're doing and let them acknowledge and check in on all the rest of it. This kind of event is really about building customer retention and selling wine. And the other things are fabulous for supporting that. So lots of different tools in the toolbox to use.
Great. Okay, what's your suggestion on frequency? Weekly, monthly?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think now you could probably get away with a bit more frequency. I think we ran once a fortnight in most of the events, and that seemed to work pretty well. And again, we used Tuesday and Wednesday night because they were the quietest nights of the week, and people are looking for a bit of a, something to do midweek. Monday's hectic, Thursday, Friday's hectic, but Tuesday, Wednesday, once a fortnight. You can do it once a month and do some Instagram live stuff in the meantime. Whatever you like.
There's a question here around tasting packs again. I think we answered that one before, but there's also a comment around the National Wine Centre are currently providing samples with a participation fee. Do you know anything about that?
No, I'm sorry, I don't. I mean, certainly if you want to send out small samples and it's easy to do and economical, then why not? But I'm a salesperson, so if I have the opportunity to sell people 3 bottles of wine, I'm going to do that and hope that they order more and order more. But, again, if you're thinking about how you might, need to bring people in who might be a bit reluctant, but again, you have to think when we started this 9 years ago, we had to explain to people what a live streaming was. Now, you don't need to cross that hurdle now. It shouldn't be that difficult to be able to sell a tasting pack. Again, you can give a bit of an incentive, but if there's other opportunities to do it differently, then give it a shot. This is all about experimenting, having fun with it. I mean, we had everything happen under the sun when we were running these events, as you can imagine. And we just learned from it and moved on.
Great. We've got lots of questions still coming through, Roberta, so I hope you've got some time on your hands. Do you recommend
No
do you recommend any strategies to track people after the activity, like special codes or discounts to benefit the winery further?
Well, that's why I advocate a club. And that way, you can track what they do in terms of their sales with you and their preferences, and then you can send out little surveys and all sorts of things that you can do to follow up with them and keep them abreast of what you're doing, but also get feedback. I'll just share quickly with you this example of a guy who came in, and he really was there to criticize this particular wine host. And the host said, right, those of you that are tasting this wine, how do you like it? And he said, well, I'm actually here because you stopped making my favorite wine. And I've always wanted to ask you why you did that. And the winemaker said, well, we actually stopped making that because hardly anybody bought it. I'm glad you liked it, but hardly anybody else did. He was nicer than that, but get my drift. And the guy went, oh, okay, well, I get that, but now what? And he was able to turn that around and say, well, we also make this. And if you really are stuck on that style, then my colleagues down the road at such and such make it. So, don't miss this opportunity, post the events to get feedback and ideas from your participants, because later on that winemaker said to me, when we just cut that off and dropped it off the site, it never really occurred to us to warn people that it was leaving. And that's, so don't miss an opportunity to get information.
Great. Is the Barossa HQ in Adelaide Hills room still going?
No, we closed them when we closed the event, when we closed the study. But I think Wine Australia, if they can get enough interest, one of them might be resurrected from the ashes for people to have a play with. But you'd have to speak to Kate Harvey at Wine Australia about that. But no, these are all, Mount Servan have retired. Bert and Jenny live in town now. And so no, sadly, they're not active.
Okay, cool. There's lots of new webinar platforms available now with advanced functionalities and reporting and analytics and all the things that you can get now in digital format. Do you have any preference, or have you reviewed these recently?
I have reviewed them for a different study. And again, that's true. But I would also warn people not to get lost in data. The things that we found mattered the most was I reviewed all 1,700 lines of feedback watch the videos. I was there for them, and you can see, you know, you get a sense of what's going on. And your best analytic is how many people are in your group, who joins you, and how much wine are you selling. And you know, some of these analytics, I think people get lost in them, and I'm not sure that they get the best out of what the platform is providing, to be honest.
Great. Look, I'm going to keep building through the questions. We are sort of losing people because we've been over the hour now. So if you are having to leave, don't worry, we are recording this. You will get the recording. It won't stop. So you'll get to hear all the questions later on. 15 minutes to half an hour, is that too short for a presentation such as this?
I think 15 minutes is too short. People can't really get into it. Half an hour is okay. Like I said, we found that people could stay with us quite easily for 45 minutes to an hour. Some of them ended a bit earlier. If people were really engaged, and going strong, we'd let them run for an extra 5 or 10 minutes. But we want to leave them wanting more and thinking about the next event. So, you know, 50 minutes to an hour seemed to be good. I wouldn't run it for less than a half an hour, I don't think.
Great. And target audience, is that the audience that you currently have, or do you suggest paying for social media activity or attracting new people?
I'm sorry, Linda, can I have that question again?
Sorry, the question was, should the target audience be existing within the existing database, or would you recommend that people advertise on social media to attract a new audience?
Oh no, it's about reinforcing with the existing, but bringing new customers in. So yeah, that slide that says promote by all means. And you know, some of the winemakers were a little bit worried. They said, well, you know, I'm not very exciting, or I'm not very interesting. But I can tell you, they were all interesting. When they start talking about the wines that they make and their history with the brand and the terroir and all the rest of it, they're as interesting as all get out. So by all means, you want to bring people in. So sure, the more the merrier. This is about getting new customers, growing your customer base, and engaging with them and developing that loyalty with them and learning from them.
Great. And do you recommend a time of the day, in the evening, 7 p.m. or any other time?
We did 7 because we thought most people will have had dinner by then, but not too late. So start at 7, finish by 8, and then they can put kids to bed or do whatever, you know, watch movies or get on with something else in their life. So, you know, nice and sharp and shiny, 7 till 8.
Okay, if you do the streaming on your own website, how do you get text comments streaming there as well?
That's part of the setup of that particular page in your website. Okay. So you get the guy who sets it up to put in the chat room and you know, link your Twitter account and all of that kind of stuff. It's just a page that's in your website. And again, you can talk to somebody like Isaac at 000, but you know, there's plenty of guys that do this work for a living, and then you get the chat. If you use Facebook, then you get the chat in Facebook, which already exists. You know, one of the problems with Instagram Live is recording the videos and holding on to the video and stuff. So again, depending on what you want to achieve, play around with a few different things, but in my view, it's always worthwhile bringing people into your website, and having a look at the fairly modest investment for the page is well worthwhile, in my view.
Okay, there's so many more here. I'm just wondering actually whether we should take them on board and answer them later, because like I've got at least another 25 questions, which I think will take us half an hour. What do you think?
Oh, I can stay on board if you want to, but that's okay. It's up to you.
Okay. Well, what we might do, is just keep going. Okay, just wondering. Okay, somebody's thinking about doing the tasting session on Microsoft Teams or Zoom and pre-recording it and then putting it up online later on. What do you think about that?
Well, there's already some tastings and live tastings done, but they're not live tastings. The people are live, but there's no interaction happening. So you know, we thought about Zooms and Teams, but again, if you have too many people in there, then how are you going to manage that chat where people all want to talk at once or end up talking at once? And so I think if you want to pre-record something and then present it, absolutely nothing wrong with that. But that's a different thing than having an interactive experience. Now, you could use Teams or Zoom. Let's suppose you had a small group that, you know, perhaps maybe high value clients, or here's an application with your importers, because this was sort of looked at first of all from B2C, but I could see a great application in the future for B2B, because it's likely to be a long time before people are traveling overseas extendedly, and apparently, and especially to certain parts of the world. So you could run that sort of session very effectively, as long as I think you don't have too many people in the room. That's going to be the thing.
Fair enough. Next question. Okay, this person says that they have extremely limited money at the moment. I can completely understand that.
Yeah.
And they don't think they have the ability to purchase a webcam or a tripod, etc. Can they start with just using an iPod first, and they're presuming that the quality is, and the speed and the quality of the picture is more important than the actual equipment, I guess. What do you think about that?
Oh, look, I think you can give it a try. I noticed, I mean, the camera that we purchased was about $20, $25 back then. And the microphone was 15. And so, but by all means, you know, this whole thing is also about using what you've got. So if you think you can manage what you want with that equipment, you can give it a try. I think you just have to experiment and see how well it works for you. Because I certainly understand the whole thing. I mean, that's the point, isn't it? That, you know, this, the COVID-19 situation, post the bushfires, post everything else, you know, money is very tight. So, you know, it's totally understandable.
Okay, so look, we do have a lot of questions, and I know that you said that we shouldn't not answer them. It's not that they're not important. What I'd like to do is send them over to you, and perhaps we can actually reply to them. It's only because we are losing most of our people as we speak. So I think it'd be nice if we could actually answer the questions via email to these people. What I'd like to say is thank you so much, Roberta, for your presentation today. It's been outstanding. We had a record number of people register, and we've had a record number of questions. So thank you, thank you. Just remember, those that are still there, that Roberta has offered to help one-on-one, and she doesn't know this yet, but I'm about to send her all of your questions, and she'll no doubt get back to you about that as well. Which I'm sure she will.
Okay, pleasure. See ya.
Thank you. What I'd like to say is that the presentation will be sent out to you, and we also this time will be sending out a short survey to everybody. It's very, very quick. It's only 5 or 6 questions. We'd love to understand more about what you would like to understand more about with this type of topic, and whether we can help you further. I'd just also like to mention to everybody that Wine Communicators of Australia has all of our recordings from previous webinars on our website. For those of you who are members, you have access to 100% of all of the old webinars on our website, but all of the Wine Australia sponsored webinars are held on the WCA YouTube site, of which you'll be sent a link to, and you'll be able to look back on all the old presentations there as well. The next webinar we'll be holding is our normal webinar schedule, going back to our normal webinar schedule, which is the 21st of April. It's being held by Meltwater, and it's all about marketing influencers or influencer marketing. So we hope to see you all again there. The last thing I'd like to say today is that if there is anything that we can do right at this time, it's quite a challenging time for everybody. It's a very uncertain world that we live in right now. If there's anything that WCA can help you with by respect to education through our webinar program, please, please, please let us know the topics that you would like us to find. As you can see, we can get things up running pretty quickly. You know, it was only talking to Roberta 10 days ago about this opportunity, and you know, we got it up and running within less than 10 days. So thank you again, and please do let us know what you want to hear. My email address is exec@winecommunicators.com.au, and you can see Roberta's on the screen there if you'd like to have a one-on-one chat with her. Please be safe, enjoy yourselves, and thanks again for joining us today. Bye for now.